The great hall of the Galactic Council was filled with fear. Ambassador Keyleth stood in the center of the chamber, his thin body shaking as he addressed the gathered representatives. Around him sat members of 47 different species, all of them watching the holographic display that showed the destruction of another colony world. The images were terrible. Cities burning, ships falling from the sky in pieces, millions of lives ending in fire and darkness. This was the fourth world to fall in just 3 months, and everyone in the chamber knew it would not be the last. Keyleth's voice was barely a whisper as he spoke. "We are losing this war. The Vrodics are too strong, too many, and too cruel. Our weapons cannot pierce their shields. Our ships break apart under their guns. We have tried everything we know, and nothing works." Council leader Vorian sat on his elevated platform, his scaled face showing the weight of his years. He had led the council for 2 decades, and in all that time, he had never faced a threat like this. The Galactic Council had been at peace for thousands of years. They had forgotten how to fight, and now they were paying the price. "What do you propose, Ambassador?" Vorian asked, though his voice suggested he already knew the answer and feared it. Keyleth took a deep breath. "There is one species we have never contacted. One world we marked as too dangerous to approach. The humans of Earth." The chamber erupted in noise. Representatives stood from their seats speaking in dozens of different languages. The translation devices struggled to keep up with the chaos. Some voices were angry, others terrified, but all of them were loud. Vorian raised his hand for silence. It took several minutes for the chamber to quiet down. When it finally did, he looked at Keyleth with tired eyes. "You know what you're asking. Earth is a Category 12 death world. The highest danger classification we have. The gravity alone would crush most of us. The weather patterns are violent beyond measure. The native life forms are aggressive and deadly, and the humans themselves evolved as apex predators. I know all of this," Keyleth said. "I have read every report we have on Earth. I know that humans hunt for sport. I know they eat the flesh of other animals. I know they wage war on each other with terrifying frequency. I know that their entire evolutionary history is written in blood and survival." He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "But I also know they have something we do not. They know how to fight. They know how to survive against impossible odds. And according to our limited observations, they have developed technology specifically designed for warfare: nuclear weapons, chemical weapons, biological weapons, and most recently, ships capable of traveling faster than light." A representative from the Delthian cluster spoke up, her voice high and trembling. "If we bring these humans here, what is to stop them from conquering us instead of the Vrodics? We would be inviting wolves to protect us from tigers." Keyleth turned to face her. "Perhaps nothing. Perhaps we are making a terrible mistake, but I would rather take that chance than watch our civilization die with certainty. The Vrodics have already killed billions of our people. They show no signs of stopping. They take no prisoners. They accept no surrender. They simply destroy everything in their path." He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of as many representatives as he could. "We have a choice to make. We can continue fighting with our own limited abilities and watch our worlds burn one by one, or we can call for help from the only species in the known galaxy that might be able to stop this invasion. Yes, the humans are dangerous. Yes, they are unpredictable, but they are also our last hope." The debate went on for hours. Some representatives argued that it was better to die free than to risk enslavement by Deathworlders. Others pointed out that the humans might not even respond to the message. After all, Earth had been isolated from galactic civilization for its entire history. The humans might not care about the fate of alien species they had never met, but in the end, desperation won the argument. The council worlds were dying. Children were crying for parents who would never come home. Ancient cities that had stood for millennia were reduced to rubble. The gentle civilizations of the galaxy were facing extinction, and they had no other options left. Vorian called for a vote. The decision had to be unanimous according to council law. One by one, the representatives stood and gave their approval. Some did so with confidence, others with resignation, a few with tears streaming down their faces. When the last vote was cast, Vorian nodded slowly. "Very well. Let the record show that on this day the Galactic Council made the decision to contact Earth. May the universe have mercy on us all if we are making a mistake." The message was prepared carefully. It could not be too demanding, or the humans might take offense. It could not be too weak, or they might not understand the urgency. After many revisions, they settled on something simple and direct. People of Earth, we are the Galactic Council, a coalition of 47 civilized species. We are currently under attack by an aggressive force known as the Vradics. They have destroyed 4 of our worlds and killed billions of our people. Our defenses are failing. We are dying. We do not know if you will receive this message or if you will care about the fate of species you have never met, but we are sending it anyway because we have nowhere else to turn. Can you help us? The message was transmitted using quantum communication technology, sent directly to Earth across the vast distance of space. Then came the waiting. Days passed with no response. Then weeks. Some members of the council began to lose hope. Perhaps the humans had received the message and decided to ignore it. Perhaps their technology was not advanced enough to detect quantum transmissions. Perhaps they simply did not care. Ambassador Khalith checked the communication channels every day, sometimes every hour. He knew it was foolish to expect an immediate response. Space was vast, and even quantum communications took time. But he could not help himself. Every moment without a response felt like another step toward extinction. On the 21st day after the message was sent, the response came. It was short, direct, and written in perfect Galactic Standard language, which meant the humans had been listening to Council communications for some time without revealing themselves. The message said simply, "We received your distress call. We are preparing a response force. Estimated arrival in your space in approximately 3 weeks. Hang on. Help is coming." Khalith read the message 3 times to make sure he was not imagining it. Then he rushed to the council chamber, calling an emergency session. When the representatives gathered, he displayed the message for all to see. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then someone began to laugh. It was a nervous, slightly hysterical laugh, but it was still laughter. Soon others joined in, not because anything was funny, but because they were still alive and they had hope again. But Voreen did not laugh. He read the message again and noticed something the others had missed. The humans had said they were preparing a response force, not sending aid workers or medical supplies. A response force meant military ships, combat troops, weapons of war. The Deathworlders were coming, and Voreen wondered if the Council had just made the greatest mistake in its 12,000-year history. They had asked for aid, but what they were getting was something else entirely. They were getting warriors from a world where everything wanted to kill you and only the strongest survived. They were getting predators who had climbed to the top of their food chain through violence and cunning. They were getting humans. Voreen looked at the celebration happening around him and said a quiet prayer to deities he was not sure he believed in. He prayed that the humans would be their salvation and not their doom. He prayed that the choice they made today would save the galaxy instead of condemning it to a different kind of darkness. But most of all, he prayed that when the humans arrived, they would remember that the Council species were not their enemies. They were simply desperate people who had nowhere else to turn. 3 weeks suddenly felt like both an eternity and not nearly enough time to prepare for what was coming. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the ESS Defender, watching the stars streak past as his ship traveled faster than light. He was a tall man with short dark hair and eyes that had seen too many training simulations of combat. Now those simulations were about to become real. Behind him, his crew worked at their stations with focused intensity. They were the best Earth had to offer, chosen from thousands of applicants who wanted to be part of humanity's first journey into deep space. They had trained for 3 years, learning everything they could about alien species, galactic politics, and space warfare. But training and reality were 2 different things. Lieutenant Sophie Grant looked up from her navigation console. She was younger than most of the crew, only 26 years old, but she had a gift for reading sensor data that made her invaluable. "Captain, we're approaching the coordinates the Council provided. I'm picking up multiple ships in the sector. Some are broadcasting Council identification signals. Others are different. Those must be the Vradics." Jake nodded and straightened his uniform. This was it. Humanity's first contact with alien life, and it was happening in the middle of a war zone. He wondered briefly what historians would write about this moment, assuming anyone survived to write history. "All hands, battle stations," he announced over the ship-wide communication system. "This is not a drill. We are about to enter an active combat zone. Remember your training. Trust your crewmates, and let's show the galaxy what humans can do." The crew moved with practiced efficiency, checking weapon systems, reinforcing shield generators, and preparing damage control teams. Every person knew their role. Every person knew that mistakes could cost lives. Communications, open a channel to the council ships, Jake ordered. A moment later, the view screen flickered to life. An alien face appeared and Jake felt his breath catch slightly. He had seen pictures of the council species during training, but seeing one in real time was different. Ambassador Keyleth looked like a cross between a human and an insect, with large dark eyes and thin fingers that ended in 3 delicate points. His skin was a pale blue color, and his movements were graceful in a way that made Jake think of dancers. But what struck Jake most was the fear in those alien eyes. Keyleth was terrified, and Jake realized with a sinking feeling that the ambassador was not afraid of the Vratics. He was afraid of the humans. "You actually came," Keyleth whispered, his words translated into English by the communication system. "We sent the message, but we did not truly believe anyone would respond. Especially not so quickly." Jake kept his voice calm and professional. "We received your distress call, Ambassador. We're here to help. Where do you need us?" Keyleth seemed to struggle with his words as if he could not quite believe this was happening. "The Vratics are attacking the colony on Praxis 7. It is a farming world with over 2 million inhabitants. We have 3 defense ships there, but they are being destroyed. Our weapons barely damage the Vratics vessels, and our shields collapse under their firepower. We have already lost thousands of people, and we will lose many more before this day ends." Jake felt a familiar anger building in his chest. It was the same anger he had felt during training when they showed him videos of the Vratics attacks. Innocent people dying while warships destroyed their homes. Children screaming for parents who would never answer. It reminded him too much of Earth's own bloody history. "Send us the coordinates," Jake said firmly. "We'll handle it." Keyleth's eyes widened even further, which Jake had not thought possible. "Handle it?" "Captain Morrison, you have 1 ship. The Vratics have 15 vessels at Praxis 7, including 3 heavy cruisers. This is not a fight you can win. We only ask that you help evacuate the civilians before the planet falls." Jake allowed himself a small smile. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who knew something the other person did not. "Ambassador, with all due respect, you asked for our help. Now please let us do what we do best. Send those coordinates." The transmission ended and the bridge was silent for a moment. Lieutenant Danny Cole broke the silence with a low whistle. He was the weapons officer, a stocky man with red hair and a talent for destruction that would have worried Jake if it was not so useful. "They have 15 ships and we have 1. Those are pretty bad odds." "For them," Jake replied, and several crew members chuckled nervously. Sophie input the coordinates into the navigation system. "Course laid in, Captain. We can be there in 40 minutes at maximum speed." "Make it 30, Jake said. "I don't want to lose any more civilians than we have to." "Helm, maximum burn. Engineering, I need everything you can give me." The Defender surged forward, its powerful engines pushing the ship faster than any council vessel could match. The crew felt the acceleration even through the artificial gravity systems. A reminder that this ship was built by people who had evolved under crushing gravity and knew how to handle extreme forces. As they approached Praxis 7, the tactical display began to fill with information. Sophie read off the data with a steady voice, though Jake could hear the tension underneath. "I count 15 Vratics ships, as the ambassador said. 3 heavy cruisers, 7 destroyers, and 5 support vessels. They're in a standard attack formation surrounding the planet. The council ships are badly damaged and retreating. Captain, their shields are at less than 20%. They won't last another 10 minutes. Jake studied the display, his mind working through tactics and possibilities. The Vratics formation was textbook perfect, designed to overwhelm defenders through concentrated firepower, while protecting their own vessels with overlapping shields. It would work brilliantly against any council species, but Jake was not from a council species. He was from Earth, where military strategy had been refined through thousands of years of nearly constant warfare, where generals studied ancient battles and modern conflicts with equal intensity, where victory often went not to the strongest but to the most cunning. "Weapons, load all railguns with tungsten penetrator rounds," Jake ordered. "Prepare nuclear-tipped missiles in tubes 1 through 6. Conventional high-explosive missiles in tubes 7 through 12. Danny's hands flew across his console. "Aye, Captain. All weapons ready. Targeting systems are online and tracking the enemy formation." "Good. Now here's what we're going to do. We're going to drop out of faster-than-light travel right on top of their formation. Full speed, all weapons firing. We hit them before they know we're there. Sophie, I want evasive pattern Delta running the moment we arrive. Don't give them a stable target. Sophie nodded, her fingers already programming the pattern into the flight computer. Pattern Delta ready, Captain. That's going to be a rough ride. I'm counting on it, Jake said. The rougher the better. Remember, we can handle high-G maneuvers. They can't. Use that advantage. The ship raced toward Praxis 7 and Jake felt the familiar calm that always came before combat. It was not that he enjoyed fighting, but there was a clarity in these moments. All the complications of life fell away, leaving only the mission and the people depending on him. 30 seconds to arrival, Sophie announced. Jake gripped the arms of his command chair. All hands brace for combat maneuvers. Weapons free on my mark. 15 seconds. The bridge was silent except for the soft beeping of instruments and the low hum of the engines. Every crew member was focused on their task, ready to perform actions they had practiced 1,000 times in simulation. 5 seconds. Jake took a deep breath. Somewhere on the planet below, millions of civilians were hiding in shelters praying for salvation. Somewhere in the galaxy, the Galactic Council was watching and waiting to see if they had made the right choice. Drop us in, Sophie. All weapons, fire at will. The Defender dropped out of faster-than-light travel at full combat speed, appearing in the middle of the Vratix formation like an avenging angel. For a fraction of a second, there was confusion as both sides tried to process what had just happened. Then the human ship opened fire, and the battle began. Railguns fired tungsten penetrator rounds accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed. The projectiles crossed the distance in microseconds, slamming into Vratix shields with unimaginable force. The shields, designed to stop energy weapons and slow-moving missiles, were useless against solid projectiles moving that fast. The tungsten rounds punched through the shields as if they were not there, then tore through armor plating and into the ships themselves. 3 Vratix destroyers exploded in the first 5 seconds of combat. Their power cores breached and their crews dead before they even realized they were under attack. Direct hits, Danny shouted, his voice filled with fierce joy. Their shields don't stop kinetic weapons. Loading next salvo! The Defender twisted and rolled through space, moving with an agility that seemed impossible for a ship of its size. Sophie flew the vessel like a fighter jet, using maneuvers that would have killed any Council species through sheer acceleration force. But the human crew, evolved under Earth's heavy gravity and trained in high-G environments, merely gritted their teeth and held on. Vratix ships tried to target the human vessel, but their computers could not compensate for the speed and unpredictability of the Defender's movements. Plasma bolts and missile salvos passed harmlessly through empty space where the ship had been moments before. The Council Emergency Summit was held 3 days after the battle at Praxis 7. The Great Chamber was crowded with representatives from all 47 member species, along with news observers and military advisors. But all eyes were on the small group of humans sitting in specially reinforced chairs near the center of the room. Captain Jake Morrison sat quietly, his hands folded in his lap as he watched the aliens debate. Beside him sat Lieutenant Sophie Grant and Lieutenant Danny Cole, along with 2 other senior officers from the Defender. They had been asked to attend this summit to answer questions about the battle and to discuss Earth's role in the ongoing war. But Jake could see that this was about more than just military strategy. The Council members were afraid, and they were trying to decide if they had made a terrible mistake by inviting humans into their space. Ambassador Keyleth stood at the center podium, his thin arms gesturing as he spoke. The humans saved an entire colony world, 2 million lives that would have been lost. The Vratix fleet that attacked Praxis 7 was one of their largest battle groups. It had destroyed 2 other worlds before reaching our system. The Council Defense Forces could not stop them, but 1 human ship defeated them in less than 15 minutes. Council leader Vorin shifted on his elevated platform, his scales catching the light. He looked older than he had 3 days ago, as if the weight of recent events had added years to his life. Ambassador Keyleth speaks the truth. The humans demonstrated remarkable military capability, but that is precisely what concerns many members of this council. We asked for aid, but what we received was something else entirely. We received warriors whose weapons and tactics exceed anything in our historical records. A representative from the Delthian cluster stood up. She was small even by council standards, barely 4 feet tall with delicate features and large eyes. Her voice trembled as she spoke. I have reviewed the battle footage from Praxis 7. The human weapons penetrated Vradic's shields as if they were not there. Their ship moved with speeds and maneuvers that would kill any Council species through acceleration alone. And they deployed nuclear weapons, something we banned from warfare 8,000 years ago because of their terrible destructive power. Another representative, this one from the Korath Collective, added his voice to the discussion. We are grateful for what the humans did at Praxis 7, but we must ask the difficult question. What happens when this war is over? What happens when the humans of Earth decide they want more than our gratitude? They have shown us they can defeat any military force in known space. How do we protect ourselves from our protectors? The chamber filled with murmuring voices. Jake could see heads nodding in agreement across the room. He understood their fear. They had lived in peace for thousands of years, and suddenly they were confronted with a species that seemed designed for war. Lieutenant Sophie Grant leaned close to Jake and whispered, They're terrified of us. Even after we saved them. I know, Jake murmured back. Can't really blame them. We did just show up and blow 15 ships out of space. Vorin raised his hand for silence. When the chamber quieted, he turned his attention to the humans. Captain Morrison, you and your crew have been invited here to address this council. We would hear your perspective on these concerns. Jake stood up slowly, and he noticed several council members flinch at the movement. He was not trying to be threatening, but he realized that everything about humans looked dangerous to these gentle species, the way his muscles moved under his skin, the way he stood balanced on the balls of his feet. Even his teeth, visible when he spoke, were the teeth of a predator. He walked to the center of the chamber, and the crowd parted to let him through. When he reached the speaking platform, he took a moment to look around at all the alien faces watching him. Some showed fear. Others showed curiosity. A few showed hope. Council members, Jake began, keeping his voice steady and calm. I understand your fear. Believe me, I do. We're not like you. We come from a world that tried to kill us every day. A world where the weather could destroy entire cities, where animals hunted us just as we hunted them, where diseases killed millions before we learned to fight back. We evolved to survive in that environment, and that evolution made us into what we are today. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. Yes, we're good at war. We had to be. On Earth, if you couldn't fight, you died. If you couldn't adapt, you went extinct. Our entire history is written in blood and struggle. We fought each other for thousands of years before we finally learned to work together. We built weapons capable of destroying our entire planet. We came very close to wiping ourselves out more than once. The chamber was completely silent now. Every representative was listening intently. But that same harsh world taught us something else, Jake continued. It taught us compassion for those who suffer. When we saw your distress call, when we learned that billions of innocent people were dying, we couldn't ignore it. We couldn't just sit back and do nothing while others were in pain. Because we know what it's like to struggle. We know what it's like to face extinction. And we decided a long time ago that if we ever had the power to help others, we would use it. He gestured to the holographic display showing the aftermath of Praxis 7. Yes, we destroyed those Vratix ships, but we also gave them a chance to retreat. We could have killed every single one of them. Our weapons were more than capable of it, but we let them go because we're not here to commit genocide. We're here to stop one. A representative from the Yethian Assembly raised his hand. But how can we trust that you will remain peaceful once the Vratix are defeated? You say you are here to help, but words are easy. Actions are what matter, and your actions have shown us that you are the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Jake nodded slowly. You're right. Actions do matter more than words. So let me tell you what Earth proposes. We'll send more ships to help you fight the Vratix. We'll train your military forces in tactics that actually work against a superior enemy. We'll share our technology where it makes sense, but we won't take control of your worlds. We won't demand payment or tribute, and when this war is over, we'll go home. Just like that? The Yethian representative asked skeptically. You'll simply leave? Just like that, Jake confirmed. But we'll leave behind something important. We'll leave behind the knowledge that you don't have to be helpless, that even gentle species can learn to defend themselves. That peace is worth fighting for. Vorin leaned forward, his eyes studying Jake carefully. And what does Earth want in return for this assistance? Jake smiled, and he made sure it was a warm smile, not the predator's smile he had shown during battle. We want what every species wants, Council Leader. We want to know we're not alone in the universe. We want friends among the stars. And we want a chance to prove that being strong and being good are not opposite things. They can exist together. He looked around the chamber again. On Earth we have a saying. With great power comes great responsibility. We know we're dangerous. We know we're scary. But we also know that power without purpose is just destruction. We came here because you needed help and we had the ability to provide it. That's all. Ambassador Calith rose from his seat. Council Leader Vorin, if I may speak. Vorin nodded permission and Calith walked to stand beside Jake. The contrast between them was striking. Calith was thin and delicate, barely reaching Jake's shoulder. But when he spoke, his voice was firm. I have spent the last 3 days speaking with Captain Morrison and his crew. I have asked them difficult questions about their intentions and their culture. And I have learned something important. The humans are not monsters. They are survivors. There is a difference. He turned to face the council. Yes, they are capable of terrible violence. But they are also capable of terrible kindness. Do you know what the first thing Captain Morrison asked me after the battle was? He asked if we needed medical supplies for the wounded on Praxis 7. He asked if there were orphan children who needed care. He asked how the council could better prepare civilian shelters for future attacks. Calith's voice grew stronger. These are not the questions of conquerors. These are the questions of people who genuinely care about the suffering of others. I propose that we accept Earth's offer of assistance. And when this war is over, I propose we offer them a seat on this council, not as our masters but as our equals. The chamber erupted in discussion. Some representatives stood to voice their support. Others shouted objections. The debate raged for over an hour, with passionate arguments on both sides. Jake returned to his seat and waited patiently. He knew this was not a decision that could be made quickly. These species had lived in peace for millennia. Trusting warriors from a death world went against every instinct they had. Lieutenant Danny Cole leaned over and whispered, "Think they'll say yes?" "I don't know," Jake admitted. "But I hope so. We can really help them if they let us." Finally, Vorin called for a vote. The decision had to be unanimous according to council law, which meant every single species had to agree. Jake watched as, one by one, the representatives stood to indicate their approval. Some stood quickly, without hesitation. Others took longer, clearly struggling with the decision. A few had tears in their eyes as they rose. 6 weeks after the council summit, 12 more ships arrived from Earth. They were not as large as the Defender, but each one was packed with weapons, supplies, and most importantly, people who knew how to fight. The human fleet now numbered 13 vessels, and they were spread across council space, defending vulnerable worlds and pushing back Vratix forces wherever they appeared. But Captain Jake Morrison knew that ships alone would not win this war. The council needed to learn how to defend itself. That was why he was currently standing on the training station above Astrian Prime, watching as Lieutenant Danny Cole tried to teach a group of alien soldiers the basics of human combat tactics. The training room was large and open, with padded floors and walls to prevent injury during practice. 30 soldiers from various council species stood in neat rows, all of them wearing standard council military uniforms. They looked nervous, and Jake could not blame them. Learning warfare from Deathworlders was probably terrifying. Danny stood at the front of the room, his red hair bright under the station lights. He had a natural talent for teaching, able to break down complex ideas into simple steps. Okay, everyone, let's start with the most important lesson. When you're fighting someone stronger than you, never fight fair. Fair fights are for sports and competitions. Real combat is about survival, and survival means using every advantage you have. A young Estrian soldier raised his hand. He looked barely old enough to be in the military, with smooth blue skin and wide eyes that reminded Jake of a frightened deer. But instructor, we are not strong like humans. We cannot match the Vratix in physical combat. How can we use advantages we do not have? Danny smiled and walked over to the young soldier. What's your name? I am called Naren, the soldier replied quietly. All right, Naren. You're right that you're not as strong as a human or a Vratix. But let me show you something. Come at me like you're trying to attack. Don't worry, I won't hurt you. Naren hesitated, then lunged forward with his arms outstretched. Danny simply stepped to the side, grabbed Naren's wrist, and used the alien's own momentum to send him tumbling to the padded floor. It was gentle and controlled, but the point was made. Danny helped Naren back to his feet. See, I didn't use strength. I used leverage and timing. You came at me in a straight line, which made you predictable. I just had to not be where you expected me to be. The Vratics fight the same way, always straightforward, always relying on their shields and weapons. If you can be unpredictable, you can beat them. Another soldier, this one from the Korath Collective, spoke up. But in space combat, how does this apply? We cannot step aside from their plasma cannons. Same principle, different application, Danny explained. The Vratics use standard attack formations. They're predictable because they've never had to change their tactics. Every council species fights the same way, so the Vratics learn to counter it. But humans fight differently. We use irregular patterns, unexpected approaches, and weapons they're not prepared for. He walked to a holographic display and brought up a recording of the battle at Praxis 7. Watch how the defender moves. See those turns and rolls? Those are high-gravity maneuvers. The Vratics can't match them because the acceleration would kill their crews. Their targeting computers can't predict them because they're not following any standard pattern. That's how one ship defeated 15. The soldiers watched the footage with fascination and growing understanding. Jake could see the change in their expressions as they realized that superior firepower was not the only path to victory. A Yethian soldier near the back raised her hand. Instructor Cole, you keep mentioning that humans can survive high acceleration. Why is this? What makes your biology different? Danny glanced at Jake, who nodded permission to answer. It's because of where we evolved. Earth has much stronger gravity than most council worlds. Our bones are denser, our muscles are stronger, and our cardiovascular systems are built to handle extreme stress. What would crush you just makes us uncomfortable. So we cannot learn to do what you do, the Yethian said sadly. Our bodies are too weak. No, Jake said, stepping forward. That's exactly the wrong way to think about it. You can't do what we do, but we can't do what you do either. Some of you can see in spectrums of light that humans are blind to. Some of you can process information faster than our brains can. Some of you can survive in environments that would kill us in seconds. The key is using what you have, not wishing you had something else. He walked to the holographic display and changed the image. Let me show you something. 3 days ago, a council patrol ship encountered a Vratic scout. The council ship had no chance in direct combat, but the captain did something clever. He led the Vratics into the radiation belt of a nearby gas giant. The radiation didn't affect the council ship much because it was designed to handle it. But the Vratic shields failed and their ship was disabled. The council captain captured the enemy without firing a single shot. The soldiers murmured with surprise and approval. That captain understood what I'm trying to teach you, Jake continued. You don't beat a stronger enemy by becoming stronger. You beat them by being smarter. You use the terrain. You use deception. You hit them where they're weak and avoid where they're strong. These are the things humans learned over thousands of years of warfare, and these are the things we're here to teach you. Over the following weeks, the training intensified. Human instructors worked with council military forces across dozens of stations and planets. They taught small unit tactics, strategic planning, and most importantly, how to think like warriors instead of peacekeepers. Lieutenant Sophie Grant found herself teaching navigation and sensor analysis to council ship pilots. She stood in a simulator room, watching as an Astrian pilot practiced evasive maneuvers. Better, Sophie said as the pilot completed a complicated role that would have been impossible a few weeks ago. But you're still being too predictable. The computer can track you because you're following a pattern. Try this. Instead of planning your next 3 moves, just react to what the enemy does. Stay random. The pilot tried again, this time moving more erratically. The simulated enemy fire missed by wider margins. That's it, Sophie said excitedly. You're getting it. The Vratics targeting systems are fast but not creative. They predict where you'll be based on where you've been. If you break your patterns, they can't hit you. The Astrian pilot turned to look at Sophie, and there was something like joy in his expression. I never thought I could fly like this. We were always taught that proper navigation follows precise courses and predictable patterns. This is liberating, Sophie smiled. Welcome to the human way of doing things. Sometimes chaos is better than order. Meanwhile, back on the Defender, Jake received regular reports from Earth. More ships were being built. More volunteers were signing up to join the war effort. Humanity had embraced its role as the Council's defenders with an enthusiasm that both impressed and worried Jake. He was reading the latest report when Ambassador Keyleth visited the ship. The alien ambassador had become a regular presence, often checking on the human forces and offering whatever assistance the Council could provide. "Captain Morrison," Calith said as he entered the bridge, "I bring news from Council intelligence. The Vrydics are gathering their forces for a major offensive. We believe they are planning to attack the core worlds within the next month." Jake looked up from his reports. "The core worlds? Those are the most heavily populated systems in Council space, aren't they?" "Yes," Calith confirmed, his voice heavy with worry. "If they succeed, billions will die. It would be the end of our civilization." "How many ships are they gathering?" "Our scouts report at least 200 vessels. Possibly more. It is the largest fleet they have ever assembled." Jake felt his stomach tighten. 200 ships against 13 human vessels and whatever Council forces remained operational. The odds were not good even for Deathworlders. "We need to buy time," Jake said, thinking aloud. "Time for more ships to arrive from Earth. Time for your newly trained forces to be deployed. Time to prepare defenses." He looked at Calith. "Where are the Vrydics gathering their fleet?" "In the Keldon system. It is a dead system with no planets, just asteroid fields. They are using it as a staging area." An idea began to form in Jake's mind. It was risky, possibly suicidal, but it might work. "Ambassador, I need you to trust me. And I need you to convince the Council to trust me too." Calith looked worried. "What are you planning, Captain?" "Something very human," Jake replied with a grim smile. "We're going to attack them first. We're going to take 13 ships into a system with 200 enemy vessels, and we're going to make them think twice about attacking the core worlds." "That is insane," Calith said flatly. "You will all be killed." "Maybe," Jake admitted. "But maybe not. The Vrydics have never faced a force that was willing to attack when outnumbered. They've never dealt with an enemy that used guerrilla tactics instead of set-piece battles. We're not going to fight them directly. We're going to hit them hard, cause chaos, and disappear before they can respond. We're going to make them afraid." "Afraid of 13 ships?" "Afraid of what those 13 ships represent," Jake corrected. The 13 human ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Keldon system. Before them, spread across the darkness of space, was the largest Vrydics fleet ever assembled. 200 warships, all preparing for the invasion that would destroy the Council's core worlds. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Defender, studying the tactical display with calm focus. Around him, his crew worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. They all knew the odds. They all knew this might be a one-way mission. But not one of them had hesitated when Jake explained the plan. "All ships report ready, Captain," Lieutenant Sophie Grant said from her navigation console. "They're waiting for your signal." Jake nodded and opened a channel to the entire human fleet. "All vessels, this is Morrison. You all know why we're here. The Vrydics are planning to attack the core worlds and kill billions of innocent people. We can't let that happen. Today we're going to teach them that attacking the Council means facing Earth, and Earth doesn't back down from a fight." He paused, looking at the faces of his bridge crew. "We're not here to win a fair fight. We're here to cause chaos, to make them afraid, and to buy time for reinforcements to arrive. Hit fast, hit hard, and get out before they can organize a response. Stay alive, stay smart, and remember what we're fighting for." Morrison out. The 13 ships split into 3 groups and accelerated toward the Vrydics fleet. Jake's group of 5 ships headed straight for the center, where the largest concentration of enemy vessels was gathering. It looked like suicide, but that was the point. The Vrydics detected them quickly. Alarms began sounding on enemy ships as sensors picked up the approaching human vessels. For a moment, there was confusion in the Vrydics command structure. 13 ships attacking 200 made no sense according to any military doctrine they understood. That moment of confusion was all the humans needed. The 5 ships in Jake's group opened fire simultaneously. Railguns launched tungsten rounds at tremendous velocity. Missiles streaked through space, their engines burning bright. The humans targeted the largest ships first, the command vessels and heavy cruisers that formed the backbone of the Vrydics fleet. Explosions bloomed across the Vrydics formation. 3 command ships were destroyed in the first minute of combat. Their shields, still being calibrated for the coming invasion, failed to stop the kinetic weapons. Armor plating that could withstand energy weapons crumpled under the impact of solid projectiles moving at relativistic speeds. Direct hits on primary targets. Lieutenant Danny Cole shouted from his weapons station. "Enemy formation is breaking apart. They're trying to respond, but they can't coordinate without their command ships." Sophie sent the Defender into a tight spiral, dodging plasma bolts and missile fire. The acceleration would have killed most Council species, but the human crew merely gritted their teeth and held on. Second group reports successful attack on the supply vessels. They've destroyed 15 ships and are withdrawing as planned. Third group is engaging the Vradix heavy destroyers on the eastern flank. Another officer reported, enemy casualties mounting. Jake watched the tactical display as the battle unfolded. The human ships moved like predators, striking quickly and then disappearing before the Vradix could mount an effective defense. They used the asteroid field for cover, popping out to attack and then vanishing again. They targeted command ships and support vessels, creating confusion and fear throughout the enemy fleet. But the Vradix were not helpless. They had numbers on their side, and they were beginning to adapt. Plasma cannons found their marks and 2 human ships took heavy damage. One of them, the ESS Liberty, reported critical damage to its engines. Liberty is venting atmosphere, Sophie said, her voice tight with worry. They're requesting assistance. Jake made a decision instantly. All ships cover the Liberty's retreat. Danny, I want a full missile spread on those Vradix destroyers harassing her. Sophie, get us between Liberty and the enemy now. The Defender surged forward, placing itself between the damaged Liberty and the pursuing Vradix ships. Railguns fired continuously, forcing the enemy to focus on defense instead of attack. The other human ships formed a protective screen, buying time for Liberty to limp toward the edge of the system. A plasma bolt hit the Defender's port side, and the ship shuddered. Warning alarms blared across the bridge. Shields at 40%, an officer called out. Minor hull breach on Deck 3. Damage control teams responding. Jake ignored the alarms and focused on the battle. Danny, concentrate fire on that lead destroyer. I want it gone. Aye, Captain. Firing everything we've got. The Defender unleashed its full arsenal. Railguns, missiles, and even the ship's experimental laser weapons all fired at once. The Vradix destroyer tried to evade, but it was too slow. The combined firepower overwhelmed its shields and tore the ship apart. Liberty is clear, Sophie reported. She's made it to the jump point and is heading back to Council space. Good. All ships begin withdrawal. We've done what we came to do! The human fleet began to retreat, still firing as they went. They had been in the Keldon system for less than 20 minutes. But in that time, they had destroyed or damaged over 30 Vradix ships and thrown the entire enemy fleet into chaos. As the Defender prepared to jump to faster-than-light travel, Jake took one last look at the tactical display. The Vradix fleet was scattered and disorganized. Their invasion plans were in ruins. It would take them weeks, maybe months, to reorganize. Time. They had bought the Council precious time. The ship jumped, and the stars streaked past as they raced back toward Council space. On the bridge, the crew let out a collective breath they did not know they had been holding. They had survived. 3 weeks later, the Vradix sent a message to the Galactic Council. It was not a battle report or a threat. It was a request for negotiations. Jake stood in the Council chambers once again, this time watching as the Vradix ambassador appeared on the view screen. The alien looked different from the species Jake had encountered before. Where Council species were gentle and refined, the Vradix were hard and angular, with thick armor plating and multiple arms designed for combat. But right now, the Vradix ambassador looked tired and afraid. Council leader Vorin, the ambassador began, his words translated into Galactic Standard. The Vradix Empire wishes to discuss terms for ending hostilities. We had believed the Council to be weak and defenseless. We were wrong. The humans have shown us that attacking your worlds comes with a price we are not willing to pay. Vorin leaned forward on his platform. Are you offering surrender? We are offering withdrawal, the Vradix ambassador clarified. We will leave all Council territories immediately. We will return to our own space and cease all military operations against your species. In exchange, we ask only that the humans do not pursue us into our home systems. We have seen what they can do, and we have no wish to face them again. Jake felt a mix of satisfaction and sadness. Satisfaction that the war was ending. Sadness that it had taken so much death and destruction to reach this point. Vorin looked at Jake. Captain Morrison, the Council would hear your opinion on this matter. Jake walked to the center of the chamber. The Vradix are afraid right now, and they should be. They started a war that killed billions of innocent people. Part of me wants to see them punished for that. But another part of me remembers why we came here in the first place. We came to protect life, not to take revenge. He looked directly at the Vradix ambassador on the screen. I accept your offer to withdraw, but with conditions. You leave council space immediately and permanently. You release any prisoners you hold, and you agree to open diplomatic relations, real ones where we talk instead of fight. If you can change, if you can learn to coexist peacefully with other species, then Earth will welcome you. But if you ever attack the council again, we won't just defend them. We'll make sure you never threaten anyone ever again. The Vradix ambassador was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Your terms are acceptable. The Vradix Empire will withdraw and will seek peaceful relations going forward. We have learned our lesson about attacking those under Earth's protection. The negotiations took 2 more weeks to finalize all the details. But in the end, the Vradix kept their word. Their ships left council space. Their empire fractured into smaller factions that would spend years rebuilding. The war was over. A month after the peace agreement was signed, Jake found himself standing on an observation deck on Astrian Prime, watching the stars and thinking about everything that had happened. The costs had been high. 53 humans had died during the war, along with millions of council citizens. 2 human ships had been destroyed completely, and several others needed extensive repairs. But they had won. More importantly, they had proven that humanity could be trusted with power. Ambassador Keyleth found him there, as he often did. The alien ambassador had become something close to a friend over the past months. You look troubled, Captain, Keyleth observed. Jake nodded slowly. I'm thinking about what comes next. We proved we can fight, but can we prove we can live in peace? That's harder in a lot of ways. You already have, Keyleth said softly. You could have destroyed the Vradix completely. Your weapons and tactics gave you that power.